Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Gender Nebulous. Today, we are talking about all kinds of weird and wonderful things, and you probably want to know why we've called it Gender Nebulous. And my co-host is the fabulous Miss Freda Wallace.
Hello. Well, I think the name Gender Nebulous came out of a joke we had a little bit
Yeah,
on the phone because I was thinking, like gender neutral, gender fluid, and I was like, I'm Gender Nebulous
yeah, and
because
you were saying you were going to coalesce into a star at some point.
that's the hope. But it's where stars are born,
It
and
is.
ideas can ferment,
We
and
came from a cloud of dust.
we all like to look into the stars and see the beautiful firmament.
Yeah,
So gender nebulous kind of sounded, it's like a mixture of all kinds of ideas. So
I think it kind of fits. I like it.
I
It's
wouldn't overthink it, to be honest.
no, but we were struggling to find a name, but I think that really kind of
Yeah, gender
sums
nebulous.
it up, doesn't it? Nebulous. Yeah. So, what we're going to do with this here podcast, I mean, we're going to be talking about weekly news. We're going to be dissecting some stories. We're going to be talking about
Politics.
political satire and trans issues.
Hmm. Yeah, all those things. Whatever's happening in the news, we'll just have
So, it's
well,
like a weekly
we
review.
are, we are going to be regular opinion havers.
Havers of opinions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our.
Well, I
We
like
have
that.
no qualifications
We have
whatsoever.
zero qualifications, and please don't
But
sue us because we might say something we're not supposed to.
but we do have a unique insight and perspective on what's going on in the news, and that perspective is probably going to be that we're both trans women.
Yes.
There you go. So
Right. So for today's interesting topics, I think we have four, don't we?
hmm
We're going to talk about. So let's just kind of list them first, and then we'll come back to them. We're going to talk about Nicola Sturgeon.
yeah, she's been in
He's
the
been in the news.
this week. Well, just today actually,
Mm-hmm.
she's talking about her bid for independence, and
Yeah.
obviously around that you've got Joanna Cherry. Um, you know, she's weighing in with kind of ideas about it's like a women's rights issue for her, and we know that J.K. Rowling has also made noises about Nicola Sturgeon not supporting women's rights, but what she's actually saying is that she's supporting trans women, and they don't like that. So the way that they'll frame it is they'll say Nicola Sturgeon hates women. That's the most basic way they can actually frame it, but they'll sort of tie themselves into knots and say lots of other things about lesbians and lesbian erasure and the rights of women. But the only thing they really want to say is they don't like Nicola Sturgeon's view that self ID should be a policy and it should be a more, just a more humane and easy way to self ID as the gender you want to be, and that for them, for those people, for Joanna Cherry, J.K. Rowling, and all the people underneath there that they amplify, they obviously, don't like that idea. So the way to attack Nicola Sturgeon is to say she's anti-women when she really isn't. She's done a lot for women's rights.
She has, and she's been on a couple of interviews this week. There was one with LBC, Gina
Mm.
Davidson. I think she's the Scottish political editor,
Mm.
and they were talking about. Well, Nicola was talking about how trans women are not the problem; it's actually abusive men.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a little clip of this, which I'll insert into the podcast when I edit it. Um, so what I mean, what's you've heard it? What's your take on that interview?
Well, the thing is, it feels to me like Nicola is forced to say something about it, even though, in the great scheme of things, I'm sure on Nicola Sturgeon's table in her office, it isn't. Trans issues are not that big a deal in her inbox, but she's people put this on the table because they know it's what I call a barometer issue. So it will become a talking point in the kind of tabloid media.
Yeah, well,
So
it's
that
all around the upcoming Gender
yeah,
Recognition Act reforms in
yeah,
Scotland,
yeah.
isn't
But
it? I
it's
think
it,
that's
but in
coming up
rea
in a couple of weeks.
yeah. So in reality, it's not going to affect anybody but trans people. It will make
Yeah.
our lives easier.
Mhm.
If they didn't mention it, they would never notice because I identify as Freda, as female now. even though I don't have a gender recognition, I'm going through the process of applying for a gender recognition certificate. I don't have it yet, but I have a passport, I have a driving license, I have all my other ID in place. So, and I had that within a few months of coming out as trans. So it's just a formality.
Yeah.
All self ID does for me is it allows me to get married or die in dignity, whichever comes first. And I think it might be the latter. But that's it basically. So if I was ever involved in any legal situation, imagine I committed a crime, and for whatever reason the judge says, right, Freda, you're going to get sent down. It would mean that I would have certain rights in being housed in a prison that would, where the safeguarding would be right for me. So for them people, they would say, oh, there's men in women's prisons. And that is their angle, because they don't understand that, if I was to go, I don't fancy me chances in strange ways.
No.
Right. So think about that. And that's all that's about. And it's like when somebody goes to prison, they get stripped of their rights anyway. It's not like somebody has some additional rights because they've committed a crime. You're actually in a position where you've never had less rights ever in your life.
Yeah, you are stripped of rights.
And you're basically being abused by the system. And I'm not saying we should let, I'm sure there are people in prisons that we should not have any sympathy for because they've done heinous crimes. And I'm not qualified enough to make those decisions. But all I can tell you is that the people that say keep prisons single sex have absolutely no idea about prisons or the judicial system or about women in prison. Because I've met women that have been in prison through my job, and they're not there because of any. They're there because they've suffered, domestic abuse and abuses all their life, and none of those abuses are the fault of the trans issue. They're a much bigger issue, and it's to do with systemic misogyny. We talked about this before, I think, but yeah. So yeah,
one of the things we were talking about was safety for women, all women.
Yeah,
it affects trans women and cis women equally.
Yeah, well, that's the thing they don't like, you see, because like when it comes to single sex spaces and anything like that, and the idea of how you identify, like the women I work with, the women in my social life, they understand that I am safe with them.
Yeah.
Because they know that when men are predatory, when men are a problem, they don't care if you're a trans woman or a cis woman. They just see a woman-shaped thing, and their stupid brain, because they choose to abuse, is going to see you in the same way, right? So the argument is from TERFs is that you are woman face. You're wearing the costume of a woman, right? But I didn't invent that. But the thing with that is, it's like saying to somebody who is the subject of domestic abuse or sexual abuse, you were asking for it. It's on the same kind of level to me. So the women that I know, at least in my social circle, the cis women, they say you are protected by us because we recognize the same systemic misogyny affects you.
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers, the numbers of trans women there are in this country, what is the percentage of trans people? Like 1%. So it's half that figure is trans women, half is men, let's say. So you've got a really small number, maybe 300,000 trans women in the whole country. And yet you've got all these anti-trans organizations, spending loads of time and money and effort
just
against trans women, where the real problem is not trans women, it's abusive men. So why don't they spend that same effort against fixing the problem with men?
Well, there's a very simple answer to that, and it's because the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, the patriarchy, whatever, they prefer that branch of feminism that attacks trans because it takes the spotlight off them.
Yeah, but if you listen to that Nicola Sturgeon interview, I mean, that's the point she makes. She says she's a feminist who fights real issues that are affecting women, not these stupid kind of
because
issues around trans women, which are ridiculous,
But Nicola Sturgeon is someone that also recognizes that misogyny also affects men. The reason men become toxic or men become aggressive is because they're shamed for whatever reason, or they're made to feel insecure, and that's part of the whole system. It's a part of the same bollocks that creates
So,
this.
yeah, I mean, she did a similar interview on Radio 4 Today program. It was very, very similar to the LBC one. For me, the two issues are, safety for all women, and don't blame the trans women.
Yeah,
Look where the real problem is.
I will say though, Nicola Sturgeon, I mean, she has to. She knows she's going to be asked about this, so she's saying the same. She's very consistent in what she's saying, and it's like she's coming from a script, and I understand that. I understand why she's got that, but you'll never ever see any trans woman in that debate at the moment, because I mean, maybe there's just not enough of us, and there's not enough people who are, elevated to be able to go on a program like Laura Koonsberg or whatever it is, or LBC. But we always rely on people speaking for us, and that's to me, that's a real problem, because once it filters up to somebody like Nicola Sturgeon, it becomes very simplified and scripted.
Yeah, but I think she's come out with a very positive statement.
No, I'm not saying she's not saying the right thing, but what I'm saying, there's a lot of nuance missing.
Yeah, well, it's a 2-minute interview, whatever.
Well, yeah.
So that was the first issue we wanted to talk about. The other one we were discussing was the Jon Stewart issue.
Yeah,
Jon Stewart has a show on Apple TV Plus called The Problem with Jon Stewart, and I think they've just started series 2, and the first episode was about gender issues, and he did an interview with Leslie Rutledge from Arkansas, who is the Arkansas Attorney General, and what's happened in Arkansas is that they've banned gender affirming care for minors. So I don't know if you've listened to that one, but
I have listened to the interview, but I don't have Apple TV, so I've not seen the episode.
The whole episode, but, there's quite a lot to it before the interview.
But you see that, the thing about Jon Stewart, and I will say this, he is a comedian, and he is somebody that knows how to work the media. So
I've never been sure where he stood on trans issues. Some of his jokes are quite kind of sarcastic, and it's not until you've listened to the whole thing he's saying that you realize what he's actually saying.
Well, I just work with what we've got, and like listening to him on that interview with Rutledge, he's very, very clear. And he's very, it's not that he's even got an opinion, it's just that he asks the right questions.
Well, he kind of turns into a proper journalist and digs into the answers, doesn't he?
Yeah, but this is the thing, with America, I find that the comedians in American media are better than the politicians I mean, you could say that about UK if you look at somebody like Frankie Boyle, and Stuart Lee, they do a very similar thing. But Jon Stewart's interview with what's the name, Rutledge?
Yeah, Leslie Rutledge.
Leslie Rutledge. I mean, to me, this comes off the back of a bigger a misogynistic culture, because these are the people that are anti-abortion rights, anti-women's reproductive rights, and it's a sliding
Republican.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, if you can say, show me a Republican, show me somebody that is anti-women's reproductive rights, and I'll show you a transphobe, and I'll show you a racist. Now, I'm not accusing that lady of being a racist, but it's on their radar, because these things are all connected. And Jon Stewart is fine. And the thing with the trans children thing, it's like a fence sitting issue where they can hope to bring people along. So where they might not agree with them on reproductive rights, where they might not agree with them on other issues, from their ultra conservative point of view, they can say that there are trans children being harmed. They can get the popularist vote.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you mean by harm. I mean, the harm really is denying them the affirming gender, care they need.
the phrase trans children. I mean, what does that mean? Are you talking about 5-year-olds? Are you talking about 16-year-olds? Those things are not the same. And it's like I knew, like personally, like when I think about my life, if I had had the resources and the support, I would have come out like when I was like 11 or 12. But if you're in like, look, when you look at America, it's really hard for me to get sort of a handle on American politics, because it's like all these different states have their all different rules. It's like in the UK we've got like just one centralized Westminster and maybe a bit of devolved Scotland and Wales, but like in America they're all like, I don't know how
states doing their own things.
Yeah, so and I don't know enough about that to be able to comment on individual
Well, yeah,
states.
it's not an easy topic. But I think what's happened in there, the Attorney General, they're basically ignoring medical experts, guidelines from medical experts from various, very well established organizations, and they're trying to take away the power and the decision making out of parents' hands.
Yeah, because but it's like they don't want to look at the doctor's information, don't want to look at the peer-reviewed information, they don't want to look at the history of. They're just looking at the shock element of saying trans children and
yeah, they've gone to their own medical people to get their opinion, who just happens to agree with what they politically think.
Yeah, but
they've used that as this is what we're going to do, and nobody gets a choice.
It's a really hard thing to demonstrate, because like, why would trans children want to come forward into the media? Why would their parents? Because they just want to get on with their lives. But you see, what I would like to see is somebody like Jon Stewart, somebody like, I know Louis Theroux did cover it a little bit.
He did.
About trans kids, but you see, I'm always wary about saying trans kids, because that developmental phase is obviously, nothing is, you have to let the child have the freedom to express that. So yeah, fine, you can argue like you might need to get psychiatrists in to look at this closely and all that, but what they're doing is denying any of that. Instead of saying, yeah, oh, maybe we can look at this, they're saying, right, we're going to shut it down. So slamming the door on the but see, what they really want to do is they want to slam the door on all trans healthcare. The trans children bit is just the shoe-in, because they can bring people who may be on the fence and say they're harming your kids. It's like in the debate when they used to say that about gay people, adopting, and it's like, no, you can't influence kids that way because children are pure and innocent. And it's like, no, children know more about what's going on than you care to realize.
I mean, maybe we shouldn't say trans kids, but maybe we should be saying, kids which are suffering from gender dysphoria. Maybe that's the best.
Yeah, that makes more sense. But I mean, kids can suffer from gender dysphoria and then grow out of it. We've got to admit that. We've got to say that.
Yeah.
Right. But you've got to have the freedom, and you've got to have the forum for them to.
But that's why you have the experts who.
Yeah, because the worst thing that could happen is, say that child has the confidence. I can't imagine any child having that sort of confidence if they're from Arkansas and somewhere in those sort of states. But going up to a teacher and saying, look, I think I might be having a bit of trouble, and I feel like, I don't know how a child would even express that, honestly. But I would hate to think that child would get shut down and shamed.
Well, that's what's happening over there.
Because that's what creates toxic attitudes. When somebody feels shame and then they bury it.
What does that lead to? I mean, it leads to mental health problems for that child.
Yeah, and it makes that person a negative person.
They're saying they're trying to protect them from making these irreversible decisions, etc., etc. But the fact that you're denying them the healthcare they need will lead to mental health issues, which is even more dangerous.
Yeah, but they'll say that the medicalization of children, and obviously Jon Stewart brought that up in. Did he mention? I can't remember what he meant. What it was.
It was a really good interview, and the whole episode was really good. I really thought I was quite shocked to see something that good from Jon Stewart. To be honest, I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, he did mention like cancer treatments and things, and I thought that was a little bit heavy-handed. as a
Yeah, it may not have
comparison.
been the best kind of comparison to use, but
It does make the point that, if you're gonna start talking about medical pathways and minors, you've got to also factor in the parents.
yeah, I think what he was saying was if your child was suffering from cancer, you wouldn't be doing this to them. So why are you doing it for this issue? I think that was his point.
Well, the problem with that argument for them is they don't believe trans exists.
Yeah.
Whereas cancer definitely is, there's because trans is psychological.
Yeah, they don't see it as an issue, do they?
No, and that's the difference, and that is an issue that that is a problem in
And
the argument.
does that tie back to religious beliefs? I think it does.
Can do. Oh God, don't get me started on.
No, but it does.
American.
It kind of why is the Republican Party so kind of anti-trans? And if you look a bit deeper, it's why are they so religious too? It's kind of connections are.
They're anti-LGBTQ plus, and they have found a way in through trans issues, and we know that because it's in everything that they publish, because they've found a way that they can. It's like a sort of philosophical debate whether you're trans or not. Yeah. It's not necessarily about physiology, and it's not necessarily about psychology. It's about something personal, and that is the difference. And that, I think, is a problem for a lot of people, because the idea that a child could define what they are is frightening to them. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're a child, just shut up and you do as you're told, and that is part of that. I'm sure in a state like Arkansas. Oh, I mean, I'm very careful about. Obviously, you can't say that about a whole state. I'm sure there are people in that state.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, this is.
But they have this, like, when you look at the history of the southern states and the Bible Belt and whatever it is.
Yeah, most of these things are happening in the southern states.
Yeah, because people escape from those places. It's like imagine if you were a kid and you were growing up and you were living in there, and you got to the age where you think, God, I can just get out of here. I think
it's like the Bible Belt and the Deep South. It seems to be all those kind of states.
Yeah, so you just run away to New York, wouldn't you? If you had any
New York or California.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's why you end up with these cultures, these amazing, gay cultures, because people consolidate into a scene because they've had to escape people like Rutledge.
It seems to be like the coastal states on both sides. Maybe not so much Florida.
This is the contradiction of America, isn't it? Because like when I was growing up and looking at America, I was thinking, God, it'd be so amazing to live in America. It's like the ultimate kind of open-minded. Everybody's freaking out, but if you look at the actual reality of Central America and what's happened with the Roe versus Wade thing, it just shows you how easy it is for the power to tip. And I think that's been a shock to a lot of people, because, I mean,
it's quite shocking how Trump managed to, get his people into the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, that's it. We're still living in. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I really fear for that.
Very, strange system.
But we've got it here as well.
Yeah,
because that American style of politics is coming here.
It is. Anyway, moving on. The other thing we wanted to talk about, I think, was Suella Braverman.
Oh, here we go.
You're talking about bringing it over to the UK.
I mean, come
on.
There's
a good example, right?
The name Suella, it's like a drag name.
I keep thinking about Suellen and Dallas.
Suella Deville. It's like
the other one. I don't know.
I'm sure this is just somebody's trolling us. It's like something it's something that would be made up for, like.
It does sound like a made up name, doesn't it? Suella Braverman. It's like, came up with that. So she was in an interview as well. Or she was giving a speech, wasn't she? Where she was saying the poison of identity politics and all this stuff.
Well, I mean, if you're going to start, it's all about this anti-woke kind of common sense kind of playing to the gallery of what they think is the regular conservative voter who has a Mondeo, and just
other cars are available.
Who just think the world's gone mad and they're not interested in all this queer identity, and they don't want diversity, and they don't want inclusion. They think it's some kind of liberal lefty
wokeism.
yeah. So it's just a play into that. But
somebody who says her dream is to send an aircraft full of immigrants to Rwanda.
Yeah, she's trying.
I can't take anything else that person says seriously because she's so far right wing. It's like, what the hell's going on there?
But I'm also concerned about the use, or I'm very careful when I say this, but the use of people like Priti Patel, Kwasi Kwarteng. There's a kind of, the way the Conservatives work now is they'll get all these people, and say, oh look, we're ethnically diverse. We've got people from all sorts walks of life, but they all agree with us. So the people that
they've all been through the brainwashing process,
and you'll see black people on GB News and black conservatives being amplified way beyond their, talents, because they're no challenge to the political elite. They're actually saying what they want them to say. Now that you've got to be careful with that, because that's not me saying that those people shouldn't have a platform. I'm saying the reason that platform is there is because they're saying what the political elite want them to say, and they're not challenging. It's like Candice Owens in America. She represents the worst right wing kind of opinion, but she qualifies it by saying, well, look, I'm a black woman, so maybe I'm right, but all she's doing is clap back in at everything that Trump was saying. She's just a Trump supporter. So, your ethnicity has got nothing to do with your political leaning. But I would say that somebody like Suella is riding a kind of, this kind of anti-woke thing. It's just, I don't know. I find it really, really hard to listen to.
But she's the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom saying those things.
Yeah, because
it's totally shocking to me.
Because we've not had a general election.
To that position,
We've not had a general election in a proper one, like where somebody votes for a.
Yeah.
And that's where the rot's set in there, because
the rot has definitely set in. We're
like
on the
like
fourth.
the hangover.
Are we on the fourth Tory MP now?
But these are the people that Boris Johnson put in power.
Yeah.
And you've still got Nadine Derez popping up on on TV.
Yeah, no comment.
So they're the same people, they're not, just because they, you might think they represent diversity or inclusion. They're just not, because the only reason they're there is because they're amplified by people who recognize that they're not saying anything challenging. It's like the TERFs are not challenging anything, they're just amplifying misogyny, and they prefer that version of feminism. It's not feminism, obviously, but they think it is. Because somebody like J.K. Rowling can say, Nicola Sturgeon is a threat to women. It's like these are not feminists. These are just.
Yeah, didn't she wear that on a t-shirt?
Yeah, and it's exactly the same kind of.
Isn't that libel?
I don't know if it's libel, but the thing is, they're using the language of protest. They're using the language of the left to say something which is right wing.
Yeah.
And that it's mixed up with situationism and art protest and all that kind of thing. So like everything is sort of melted together now in a sort of mess, and nobody knows what is real anymore.
Try navigating your way through that lot.
It's very nebulous.
It's very nebulous. Yes, indeed. Which brings us neatly onto our last topic, which was Penny Mordaunt.
Oh yeah.
So Penny Mordaunt.
I had big hopes for Penny Mordaunt.
I had big hopes. I think the whole community had big hopes,
because I saw when I watched it wasn't really hopes. When I watched the leadership elect, for the whatever, I can't even. What was it like? The pick and mix for the next.
The pick and mix for the next Tory leader. Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked at them all and I thought, actually, Penny, she's from a political class. She's not from round here.
Yeah, but
But
she had been quite supportive up to the point where she did a massive U-turn.
yeah, but I did think she was the least worst. Let's put it that
Yeah, the
way.
least worst is a good way of putting it. But
Mm.
the interesting thing that caught my eye is that she won an award from the LGBT Conservatives for Parliamentary Ally of the Year. Now,
Mm.
I don't know what she did to actually qualify for such an award.
I think she didn't say she hates trans women.
Right?
I
Is it
think
so? It's
that
something
was
that she's not done that
yeah. I
means
think
she gets an
she
award.
said she
She hasn't been
wasn't
nasty enough, so she got an award. Is that it?
she wasn't bigoted enough to not get an award.
So she's so maybe she was the least bigoted conservative, so she
That's it.
won
Yeah,
because
that's
yeah.
the least
Okay.
the least horrible person gets an award for being
Okay. Ally of the year.
yeah,
Well, see how
exactly.
that works.
Because this is all we get now. We get arseholes that are just willing to, not be too nasty to us, but just let us have a bit of something as a bit of lip
Yeah.
service, and then they get an award.
And we've seen the Tory conference all over the TV and all over the internet, and there was a photo shot with Stonewall Nancy Kelly with Penny Mordaunt, and I think Nancy got a lot of negative kind of reaction. But in Nancy's defense, I think when you're a charity at an event like that, you really have to talk to everybody. And the reason Nancy and Stonewall are there is because they're trying to change minds and they're trying to influence politicians,
Yeah, it's just
into the more kind of normal point of view
well, this
towards LGBT people. And I think Nancy got a bad rap there for doing that
well, this
picture.
is yeah. I was
But
gonna say
how do you when you're a charity and you're in a responsible position, you can't really say no to politicians doing photo shoots, can you? Because you're there for
no,
a reason, and it's to influence people.
no, and also, I mean, people criticize Stonewall, and I've got my own criticisms of Stonewall. It's like they're a massive organization they have got so big that and I'm critical of any large organization, and I will watch what they do, but if you're gonna try and change laws and change things, you've got to work with what you've got. And unfortunately for Nancy, what she's got is not very good. But she's gonna have to, if you're gonna have to fight for something, you kind of choose your allies, don't you? And then she's gonna have to work with people that
I mean, you have to remember she was at a conservative conference.
I don't think that. But for Nancy, it's not about because even if
No, it's
Labour
probably not really about politics. She's just
even if
there
Labour
to
were in
influence.
power, there are people in the Labour Party
Yeah, just as bad.
you wouldn't want a photograph with. I mean,
Yeah.
does Keir Starmer give a shit about trans rights? Do any of them understand the issues? Do any of them understand gay, lesbian, bisexual issues? No. Do any of them care about women? Probably not, really. I mean, they've got to work with what they've got.
Yeah.
And the people on the ground doing the real work, like people that work in the community and people that work in women's refuges and work in gender clinics and things, they're never going to get a photograph with Nancy Kelly because I'm not saying she doesn't empathize. I'm just saying it's because Stonewall is such a big organization. She's got to take these photo opportunities and she's got to work with whoever's in power.
Yeah. You
I
don't
don't
really
think
get much of a choice, I don't think.
I don't think Stonewall are a bad thing. I just think that
No, absolutely not.
there shouldn't be a monopoly. There should be lots of organizations. And there are. It's just they don't get the promotion, do they? Don't get the platform.
Yeah.
But
I think Nancy, she has a very difficult job running Stonewall, as do, as same thing for Mermaids. They're both going through kind of a lot of political
yeah, we
pressure
could
at the moment.
talk about the mermaids thing. I mean, mistakes have been made there, and there's no getting away from that about the recent.
Oh, the recent sacking. Yeah.
But it's not the. You see, it's really hard to. You want to defend mermaids. You want to say, look, they're doing good work, and a lot of the work, but you don't hear about the good work they do because those people don't talk about it. They just get on with
Yeah.
their lives,
Bad news is news, isn't
and for confidentiality reasons, they wouldn't talk about the people they help. So the only news you're going to hear is going to be the negative side of it, and
It's
obviously,
sensationalized bad
and
news.
I must admit, I don't really fully understand how somebody can be on a board of trustees and not be checked like that. I just don't. I'm really frustrated about that and how that was allowed to happen. But I haven't looked. I don't know I mean, I could go digging and try and find out, but I've just skimmed the news about it. And my point is about it is, look, if it was any other organization, this person, you wouldn't be making a big massive fuss about it, because you'd be looking at if any abuse actually did take place.
Yeah, well, there's going to be an investigation into how that person managed to get into that position.
Well, that's necessary.
Process will be
But
changed appropriately, I'm sure.
but what we're always see, the problem is if you're defending trans rights, if you're thinking that you obviously want to side with mermaids, but you don't want to be in a position where you're defending somebody that's obviously wrong. Like, because you can't do that. You can't make excuses for somebody that is like making noises about pedophiles maybe being okay.
I mean, they did the right thing though. As soon as they discovered the problem, he was out. So
yeah, but it's still fucking awful.
It's fucking awful. It is, and they need to do the investigation. They need to make sure that there's proper processes in place.
I'm very, very, very kind of shocked actually that was allowed to happen, because you're talking about a charity for children.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your first starting point, and it just plays into it. It kind of plays into every transphobe's kind of. It kind of completes the circle for them, and it's like, what can you do? What can you, because those people already thought that mermaids were, some sort of horrible people anyway. So you put this on the table, and it's like, well, we told you so, but you didn't. They don't do anything to safeguard children. They don't help anybody. But when you think about it in that sense, like about the people, if mermaids would have existed when I was young, I would have probably got a lot out of that.
Yeah.
And so I can only say that's all I can say about it. And they had to close their helpline, didn't they?
Yeah, because of the abuse they've been getting. Yeah, difficult times.
But it's hard to talk about that because obviously the story around it is so convoluted now.
Well, I think mermaids have done the right thing. They need to investigate. They need to maybe change policies. And yeah, that's it.
Lessons to be learned. But it's just awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that concludes our section of the news this week.
Yeah. Well, I think I was going to go back to Nicola Sturgeon for a minute, because I'm hoping. What do you think that she's going to? Because all this is about the independence referendum. It's
about the GRA reform in Scotland, and it's also about independence.
Yeah, but it's I think the bigger picture is this independence referendum.
I'm sure those who don't want Scotland to be independent are using every trick under the sun to
that's it. Yeah,
because they want bad.
They want Nicola Sturgeon to be the bad person.
Yeah, if they can sell her as the bad person, it helps their causes to prevent them separating, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But I am 100% pro Scottish independence if that's what the people of Scotland vote for.
Well, being half Scottish myself,
You're a Scottish landowner, aren't you?
Don't tell everybody.
Sorry, don't tell the world.
Yeah, I own half of Scotland.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Oh dear.
So, yeah. Is there anything else happening in the news? Or is that
those are like the main things.
Some horrible topics there.
Into a half-hour podcast.
Why is everything?
Couldn't really think of anything else.
No, let's lighten it up a bit. Anyway.
So until next week, then.
Okay. Well,
we will be back, hopefully. And people, if you're listening, please subscribe, come back and listen again. If assuming you enjoyed this. If we didn't enjoy it, well,
Don't forget to subscribe.
yeah. Okay, I'll sign us off.
Bye.
Bye for now.